close out public comment and move forward with our agenda. So we are going to move to staff reports, landscaping inspection services. John was not able to make it to the meeting. If there are any items that you would like for me to inquire with John, please let me know, and I will send him an email.
I have just one comment, and that is as I was going through the landscape report, the bolded dark red items are all related to palm trimmings of the branches. And so Keith and I did talk with LMP, and I know Bill is here, and the date is this week. Is it Wednesday that they will start?
Yes.
Okay, so Wednesday they will start that trimming so the board knows, and all those palms will be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. District Engineer, Rick?
Yeah, just a couple items in your package is the Lake 7 bank restoration. That package was sent out to vendors. Bids are due on November 22nd. Guesstimating the cost is probably going to be in the neighborhood of about $70,000 at the most. And that's for pretty much all that you see there. So
That's all on Valencia Loop.
on Valencia Loop. Yeah, this is when the developer was building that part of that phase of the work, and they came back to the CDD and they asked if the building footprints could get wider, longer, and we kind of anticipated that they're going to steepen the back slopes and we're going to run into this. So that's the effect of that. They took 1.3 feet, I believe, but still, it doesn't take much for that to happen. So that was the cause. So the plan is to do the restoration that we have been. We're going to restore the bank. We're going to put the riprap right at the toe. The very edges, the erosion isn't bad, but I want to put the riprap there just so that whole area looks similar then. Any questions on that? Then the item, the hydraulic spill. One out there to look at that. It goes from the entrance of the parking lot for the golf, and it goes all the way down to the maintenance area. They zigzagged up and down through, so instead of just trying to maybe do something with one lane of the road, they zigzagged. So I did the quantity on that, and I reached out to the guy that did the asphalt rejuvenation. He has not gotten back to me, but based on the quantity and based on what I presume the estimated costs are now, that'd be somewhere around $9,000 to reseal that. Now, when I was out here, they didn't treat it right away. And with the hydraulic, you really need to treat that right away. But they did treat it about a week later or so. I went out there, and what they kind of told me how to check for penetration is to use a screwdriver, the test. And if you could push a screwdriver into the spill and it stands up on, if you could just penetrate it, stick it up there, that means it's penetrated. And I tried probably at least 10 different places up and down, and I couldn't penetrate at all. So what's going to happen is it's going to blend, fade, but just to kind of give the board the idea what it would be to retreat that, that's what I come up with. Just before we had done the rejuvenation, there was a pretty substantial spill on one of the streets off of Padova. Can't remember exactly which. We had the guys, they were out here doing the rejuvenation, and I had them look at that, tell me, do we need to do something with this before we treat it? And they thought, probably not, but they treated it and it's held up really well. So to just kind of give you some of my thoughts there.
Rick, how long would it, roughly, any idea how long it'll take to fade?
Well,
Weeks, months, days?
it'll probably be a couple months.
Just a couple of months?
I would think. Well, if it was the summertime, it'd probably do it a little faster, but wintertime may take a little bit longer, but the hotter the days, the quicker it would fade. So
Looks a lot better since
they pressure wash.
had cleaned it. Not that it matters, but was it golf course equipment or was it one of the vendors from the work that's going on, all the cement work and everything else that's going on? Does it matter?
I don't know.
It was golf course equipment.
It was golf course
Golf course
equipment.
equipment?
I wouldn't, it's a clear trail as to where it's coming from.
Yeah,
Where it was
my-
going.
If there's-
Come on.
But if there's a cost involved,
Yeah.
my question is, because of all the work that's going on there, and the vendors that are there, they've been there for months, was it one of their trucks or was it one of the golf course trucks? If we're looking for somebody to pay the $9,000 bill if we incur one, I want to know who to point the finger.
Well, I would put, first of all, I would put claims against all parties involved that you named, okay? And let them fight it out between as to who's responsible. That's the best way to handle a negligent activity of this nature.
Has there been any conversation with the golf course management about it?
Yes.
We said,
Well, right after it happened, I got a hold of Jay and he said that they were getting immaculate exteriors there to get to do what they could do to do it. It took a couple days, I guess, for immaculate exteriors to get back out here and get it, do what they do on those spots, all right? Other than that, there hasn't been any other conversation.
They accept responsibility?
Yes,
Okay. So
Well, I think the
our
good
claim
news,
is with the golf course, I would think.
yeah.
good news is that it's not causing any damage to the road right now,
But it's,
and it is fading, so.
yeah, but it's affecting property values on that street. Okay?
Well, I'm not saying we should forget.
But we should have our attorney notice the golf course, put a claim in now.
I think that
I'm a
makes
miss.
sense, actually. I think that does make sense, especially if we're gonna reseal.
Yes.
I'd be glad to.
And
Whatever
Set
the board
the-
is
the
directing.
golf
You probably
course.
didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
I knew about it. It's not on the agenda.
And I asked the vendor, I said, because they do the rejuvenation for the city of Venice, what I did is told them when they're in the area, if we can have that add on what the cost would be. So it's not like it's a special trip out for us.
How
And
long
I'll-
do you think that will take? How long scheduling time? Any idea?
The winter times, they're back here again. Summer times, they tend to go out of state, but winter times, they're back here, but I don't know.
Well, I'll work with Keith and Rick and Belinda, make sure I have all the information, and I'll get a correspondence out to the golf course.
Okay, thank you.
Rick, regarding pond restoration, in your assessment, are there other ponds, other areas that you think will need the same kind of treatment in the near future?
More than likely.
But you're not aware of any?
I haven't really looked at all of the lakes. I know driving in, there's some back sides of some ponds where they back up to wetlands or whatnot. They look pretty steep, but I've not really walked them. The priority that I give is behind residents' homes. And the least priority is the ones that back up to the wetlands and that kind of stuff.
No, that's fine. I was just wondering if we're having a vendor, if we're having bids for one area, would it make, I'm not hearing that there's any other urgency.
Yes, that's how I see it too, right?
We have a lot of money in reserves for pond restoration, and we haven't spent any of it yet, which is good. But I just didn't want to get overwhelmed at some point.
What I tried to do, years ago was to get plans to do aquatic plantings along the edges. And that cost a fraction of bank restoration, and it works. Some of the residents, the way I like to present that is if you get the right aquatic plants, they got some with the nice purple flowers, white flowers, yellow flowers, but they have the root system that stabilizes the bank and it keeps the waves from coming in. So the plants do three things. And the way I see that is it gives you bank stabilization, it gives you better water quality. And when I'm out on lakes that have the aquatic plants, the lakes are alive. They've got birds, they've got fish, they've got all kinds of stuff. The lakes that don't have any of that seem to be dead. So now the only negative is some of the residents don't like to have the plants right behind their house. They like to be able to go right down to clear water. One of the ponds that we had done the plants all around, they're looking great, all except for 2 lots. So something happened with them.
Well, the plants you're talking about they don't work.
Correct. I don't want bulrush. I want the stuff that grows to maybe 18 inches.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the last thing,
Go ahead.
the last thing on the fence repair out at the pickleball, we did get 3 bids. Miles was handling that, met with the vendors, and then we had some challenges getting the information, but we got it now. We got the three bids. The one was $2,800. One was $4,000. The other was $5,782. So we're going to work with the vendor for the $2,800.
I vote for 28. Yeah.
$2,800.
You do that.
Who was that?
Was Eagle Fence.
Okay, thank you.
And it's a fence company. The $4,000 number was from the vendor that did those warranty repairs. And that's what was just done, is there was warranty work was done. And right where the netting posts are, it appeared to me what happened is they probably didn't put the primer down. To me, it looks like the Elmer's glue that they put down before they put the surface, and it helps it bond. But right where they cut out for the squares for the concrete for the posts is where it was bubbling up. So, but when he was out here, he did look at some of the scratches from the fencing. He did repair some of the more significant ones, but we did get a price from him just for future, for him to resurface that entire area and then realign. It's probably about $6,000. And that's something you probably would do every 10 years or so for that kind of the service. That's just something to know for down the line.
What was the timing on him doing the fixing, do you know? The person whose bid seems to be the most attractive, how much time?
I haven't spoken to him. I just got the info.
Oh, I see, okay.
And I'm going to call them just to get them out there as soon as we can.
Okay, and the repair are we gonna be doing, more robust caps with through bolts?
Again, Miles was the one that was
Okay.
meeting with them. Miles was telling them the little straps around the top seemed to pull off. And again, I mean, it kind of goes back to the plan that we had for removal of the panels. You know, if it's a named storm, you need to pull off, 5 in the back, 3 on the side. If it's the Cat 2, they should have pulled them all down.
So we have to become more proactive, I guess, and address.
They-
And the cost is equivalent, less than some of these, lanais damage that I've seen. So it's not that prohibitive as indicated earlier.
Well, the fence vendors that we had originally, they said that should withstand 120 mile an hour winds if we left them up, but we still didn't want to leave them up.
So the scope of his work, just to be sure, is to replace those poles and then stretch the fence.
I need to verify. It's 3 posts. He's gonna re-put the tension wire in the bottom. I don't know if he's gonna secure the caps or just replace them, and that's what I'll find out.
Thank you. We already have.
You already,
We already have.
not to exceed.
Not to exceed, so we're good now.
Just 2 other quick things, Rick, if I may. I'm not sure that the drainage between 5 and 6 that we've just installed is necessarily working, so if we could keep an eye on it, I think it's still seeping. That work that we did in the tennis area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that area where we installed a curb, I think it may not be curving.
So on the, coming down on the pickleball?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
There was one of the fellows I met out there showed me a video, but when I'm looking at the video, I said, well, there's no curbing up here yet. He goes, oh, okay. And so when it rains again or whatnot, he was going to look. They, I was not here when they did that. Miles again met with them, and my dad for his life was a bricklayer, and I watched him. I helped him in the summers, and when he put the joints together, the butt joints, he would actually mud them up. And these were just kind of set. So he's got the mortar on the bottom, and then he set the bricks side by side by side. Now, over time, those will, I mean, they're very small. The sand will be enough to trap inside there. So, but I did talk to some people out there. I said, well, let's see if it does still come through. If it is it much? If it's very minor, we could just caulk it or some, do that kind of stuff there. Because it was just coming through in a few areas, I believe.
don't know, I haven't looked at it recently. And I wanted to just ask about, there were 4 wetlands that I think that we had some issues with. I know there was one on Mar-a-Lago I think you were looking at, and
Yes.
and I think there were 3 others, 2 on Bella Vista Terrace, and 1 on Padova or Mestri. So I was wondering if we've come along with those or not.
Yeah, the one up on Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
That one, it appeared when Keith had sent me some info, all that, it looks like the clearing actually extended down into the wetland, which is a violation. There's a 25 or 30 foot buffer that we should have stayed out of that. So we've kind of gone through to figure out what, because there's from the property line of the residents, there's like 15 foot behind their property line before we get to the buffer. So that's really how far, and then we're not supposed to maintain the buffer. We're allowed to trim it back to get to the edge, but we're really not supposed to manicure it. Now, there are buffers throughout the community where we do have a swale, and we are allowed to maintain those because we want to make sure that the drainage continues to work. But in this particular spot, the lot sloped straight down into the wetland, and that's what the buffer is supposed to do, is to treat anything coming into it. But Keith's got some bids to do aquatic plantings. So they are going to come back with those same plants that have the nice flowers. And so it should look nice. And, you know, if you don't put anything in the areas, something will grow. So instead of letting invasives come in, I think we're better off that we put in what we want to have. And I don't know if they've started that work yet.
They haven't started yet, but it's Cross Creek, our new pond specialist, and they've been informed that Mr. Bracco signed the agreement, so it should be any time. Just a matter of timing with them. So I'll check with them today too.
And some of those other the areas you mentioned, if there is exotics growing inside of the wetland, we are allowed to go in there, but we're not allowed to bring equipment in. And if we cut something that's in the wetland, we're supposed to just leave it. Now, if it's blocking the drainage pattern, we're allowed to clean that. But most of the time, they cut them and they just leave them in wetlands. And so it looks pretty bad until some growth comes back up to hide them. But yeah, we are allowed to control invasives. If it's in the buffer, we can do a little bit more than in the wetland.
Any other questions for Rick? Thank you, sir.
And it's been a pleasure working with both of you guys. I really,
Thank you.
very much enjoyed it.
Andy, do you have anything to report?
Thank you. Just an update on a few items for the board. The Kinley Horn contract, I believe, is mostly done. Amy Farrington from my office worked on that, and I know Cheryl has it. I've been working with, through Jill, I'm working with Bob Rafato on a locker room architect contract. There was a couple of comments and revisions there, but I think we're close to having a final one for execution. The assignment with LMP to Juniper, that's all done, taken care of. And also, I was working with the city of Venice with some historical help from Jerry Jasper on the debris removal. I believe that, I took a quick look through the community this morning, but I believe that that's been completed. With that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Andy?
Just a quick request, when the Killinghorn contract is final, could you send at least me a copy?
It's done. So
Yeah.
Belinda can maybe send it to all the board members. That'd be great. And I'll just repeat what everybody has already said, which is, yes, it's been a pleasure to work with both of you, and I'll miss you. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Bernard, do you have anything to report?
Yes, please. Before I give my report, I too want to say thank you to Mr. Bracco and Judge Booker on behalf of Vesta, just for your support. And myself, you guys have been very welcoming and supportive of me since I've been here. So thank you very, very much. I know you've been a great support of Julie as well and just the Vesta group. So thank you very much. We're going to miss working with you.
Thank you, John. That's very nice.
Part of our commitment to the Venetian, we have made some personnel changes. And one of them, and I think it's going to benefit the club very much, is we've reallocated our regional accountant to become our accountant here full-time. And all of you know him, Ricardo Ocasio. He will be our full-time accountant here. He'll be here 3 days a week and then working remote 2 days a week. But this will give timely reporting, timely processing of invoices and things like that, so that we're on track all the time. So I'm going to turn the reporting to Ricardo.
Thank you, Bernard. So just going over the highlights on revenue expenses for the month of September. We do have issues on September, then try to pick in everything that was missing to close out the year. So the numbers kind of skew a little on the negative side. But looking at the year to date, for the fiscal year 23-24, then that was the one I was explaining, although it shows $130,000 on the negative side. We still have to either allocate the reimbursements for the capital, that will be about $80,000, and that will change completely that number for the end of the year. I'm still waiting on that. If I'm going to allocate either this year, or if we don't allocate this year, then for October, then the numbers will be skewed on the positive side. But it will be for that same reason. Yes.
Shouldn't that be cleared out before we close?
Yes, it should be clear.
Okay, you're gonna work with Vanessa?
And yes, we clear out everything. The only thing we have to do is make sure that we can either book it for the end of the year, so that way it falls under the correct fiscal year, and that will
You have roughly any idea how much that is?
about $80,000.
I'm sorry, you said.
So your year-to-date variance would be more like 82 rather than
So that's-
162.
That is correct.
Okay, good, thank you.
I mean, that's pretty big, that needs to
That's
get.
huge.
Yes, that's why. Excuse the number. Report. On the F&B side, we had, for the month of September, although we did better than last year, way better than last year, the cost of goods side, we still a little over budget. And that's something that we are still working on the inventory side, trying to get, Bernard and Chef are working on the costing side, try to cost everything better. We did fix the inventory forms, that way everything's being accounted for correctly. And that actually helped out on the last 2 inventories that we did. But we still have some work to do on that part. For the year, for the end of the year, we were dead even so far, as last year. Although the revenue was up, our expenses were still up, so we end up at 54%, just like we did last year. And our goal was 45, so we way off of that goal. Again, and that's something that we're still working on for the food side. On the beverage side, we did better. We did well in the budget, and way better than last year at 28% compared to the 33 the budget goal. And same for the year end, it was 28%, 28.11 versus 37.9% that it was a budget. So on the beverage side, we're doing a pretty good job, but we still have some work to do on that food side. Any questions for me?
You have a number of questions outstanding.
Yes, I do.
We don't need to get into it here, but
We have
there's
to
a
go
number of
through
things that need follow-up from the September statements.
before we can close out the year.
Yeah, but that, the getting that due from cleared out is big. It's $100,000 sitting there that needs to get washed out.
That is
A
correct.
lot of it will go into capital or reserves. Some of it will remain an expense.
Yeah, we work with Greg and with Belinda and Vanessa, and we finally got that cleared up. So we took care of that one. We just have to make sure that we can book it on the correct.
I think one of the one of the good things, you mentioned, margins were worse than budget, but better than last year.
Better than last year.
Which is good. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. You know that. You've had conversations probably with most of us on some of the things that are happening. I think one of the highlights for September, and you guys are doing a great job with events and getting residents more involved, and you can see it in the participation numbers in terms of revenue being up over 70% over last year, over last September. That's 1 month. But it's a good sign, particularly there were several days, no, I'm sorry, that's October. The storms closed, that was October, we'll see what that looks like. But I had sent out a covers report to the board and the candidates-elect, board members-elect. As I mentioned in that, a lot of the historical data you really can't count on because the staff wasn't trained, they weren't putting in the appropriate numbers of covers.
That's
So
correct.
even though the numbers are there, and this year's numbers look better over last year's, we don't really have a good handle on last year's numbers. But the numbers from June, say, forward, I think are giving us good data and clearly trending in the right way.
Yes.
So great job to the staff, the planners. Getting revenue up is a great contribution to covering overhead, but just as importantly, getting costs. And credit to Bernard, he's getting Therese and Brian, Chef Brian, much more involved in the planning, the costing, working out the old inventory. The inventory has been very high for quite some time. We've got a freezer full of food that needs to be used up. And it's going to take a while to run that through. I learned some things about how they're buying, and I don't know if you want to bring it up, but we're having to place minimum orders with our vendors. We're having to buy cases of things where we only need selective items, particularly for small groups or days where covers are lower. And in talking to Bernard about ways to improve on that, one of the thoughts was, from his restaurant experience, buying more from places like Costco or Sam's Club, where you can buy a limited quantity of things. You may pay per item a little bit higher, but you're not buying a case where half the case sits in the freezer for 6 months. So I don't know if you're ready to want to pursue that or not, but it would take getting a membership at one of the clubs and making sure we have a credit card that they accept. I know we have a Costco now in Northport, Welland Park, that's much closer to where Chef Brian comes from. And Bernard, you may want to speak to this. Sure. Or make a proposal.
Yeah, I think I'd like to propose that we have a Sam's and a Costco, because, both wholesale clubs, you can get better deals on specific items. The restaurant I came from, we did $90,000 a month in revenue. And I was the first guy standing in line at Sam's Club, got my stuff, and that's how I kept my costs down, because I was a small independent guy. And I think, my commitment to the club is Bernard can go at 7 o'clock in the morning and go pick up what we need. Chef can, and Julie's been great because we'll call her and, hey, can you pick up this? So I believe that, we have had to purchase items for 20 people and have to meet the minimum. Now we can just run to wherever we need to pick up what we need. So we had an event for 20 people recently. He was going to order a $600 truck. We went to Publix and it was $120, and we were done. So that's what we feel would be the best thing for, until, when revenue really starts ramping up and we have a big event or a big whatever coming up, that we can purchase one time from a truck. And I think also, just really monitoring cost of goods. I shared with Chef, our inventory is like the stock market. We have to watch it every day because price of beef goes up every day, eggs goes up. Everything that we use goes up every day. So what we purchased last week may not be the same price this week. So we're just being aware and being smarter on how we buy, when we buy, those things, I think will help our cost tremendously. And I think we've already realized that, just preliminary numbers for the upcoming report in October, I think we're looking pretty good. I mean, our goal is to be under budget every month. And if we stay smart, and we're doing the same thing for our beverage as well, we're not keeping a whole bunch of stuff on the shelves, we want to sell it. So that's what we're doing.
My concern, obviously, about getting a membership card or a credit card to use at those places is control. What's to prevent anything from happening? Obviously, the same is true. We can be buying anything from Cisco or Cheney Brothers, and it could come in here, or it could walk out the door. That's always the case. I think having Ricardo here now, between the two of you, you can monitor if Chuck Ryan is doing the buying. You've got receipts. You've got to just tie it out every day. And just make sure that things continue to be controlled properly. But otherwise, I think it's a great idea, and we'll see what it does in terms of controlling costs. So I guess it needs board approval. Does it need board approval?
I'm not sure that it does. I was just talking to Belinda about that. I mean, it's day-to-day operations. It's good to discuss it with the board, but we expect them to take the steps that are necessary to operate efficiently. So, unless the board wants to make a formal motion, I just don't feel it's necessary. Needed.
I think it's a good idea, and I think that, I know when the new Costco opened, membership directors went around to the Sarasota schools and they offered employees a half price 1-year membership and then a coupon of the type that covered that. They may make a similar deal to you rather than charging you $160 for the card or something like that. Just by asking, they might be able to
Absolutely.
cut a deal.
Ricardo's looking into that as we speak.
I had two other concerns that I was aware of. One was both balance sheet related. One was on the receivables from residents.
Correct.
It's like 2.5 times about a year ago.
And that's because we still have some pending ACH that hasn't been built. Because the ACH was still working on it with the new bank, so it's not with the new platform for the bank. So those ACH is still pending. So that's the biggest chunk of that AR on the memory side.
It's now November. Have this been cleared up?
It will be clear out on the 15th.
Okay,
On the 15th should be clear.
great.
Do you want to talk about the ACH?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then on the payable side.
On the payable side, that's being driven by the payroll that we're talking about. I think that's the biggest,
Accounts payable? Payroll?
on the payroll. Yeah, I think the payroll was the biggest accounts payable that we had, that was driven that number so high
It doesn't make sense.
on the AP.
I don't know how much of it's payroll, but if it's one payroll that was accrued, it would only be about 60,000, 65,000.
The 60, yeah. And then we also had we had a few other items that we had that was also part of the capital expenses.
But are we slow paying
It was-
vendors?
Yes, at that point we were, because the cash flow at that time was a little low. So we had a few invoices that had to be pulled on and paid a little later.
Any idea how this will look at the end of October?
At the end of October, we should be caught up.
Okay.
And that payable should be probably a third of what it is right now, because it's,
Good.
we're looking
That's
at
what it
about
should be.
200,000, yeah, about 200,000 right now, a little over 200,000 for
We'll find
September.
We'll find out shortly.
We'll find out shortly, correct. And I wanted to mention also on the ACH, like I mentioned, we finalized already the new platform, since we're using the way that the account that we had, the commercial account we have with the bank, didn't do ACH the way we needed it done. So they had to put us on a new platform, same bank, same account number, everything else, but they changed the platform on the account. It's a treasury management account now, not just a commercial banking account. And that is finalized. We got everything taken care of, everything is already set up, and now we can do the ACHs, which is part of that AR that is still sitting there, which will be run on the 15th. And also the changes that we want to make for the on the membership side.
Yeah.
So we're planning on having being effective on January 1st.
Yeah.
Moving everybody to the ACH side.
When are we going out with that?
We're
Have we
thinking,
gone out to-
Notice is pretty, yeah.
yeah, because we're thinking January 1st as effective date, because we still have to contact every single member and making sure that we have all the information.
But we haven't even notified residents we're going to do this.
No,
It's middle of November.
that's going.
So shouldn't that be going out like now?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, they have to, we approved it at the last board meeting. It took 2 years for that to happen, so I'd like to have some assurance that it's gonna get done.
Yeah. So in that regard, I was kind of cut off from a lot of the last board meeting. I apologize for the poor communication on my part. I won't travel again on a board meeting day, except for next May. When we agreed to no longer automatically charge credit cards for residents, there was a comment made that we'll still take credit cards. And I know certainly for guests, you need to do that, but why would we do it for members? Why wouldn't it just go to a member's membership account? And really not, because if everybody starts using the credit card for food and beverage, we haven't gained much.
I think that's a much bigger change though, because there are a lot of people who don't like the accounting. They don't like things being in arrears, and there are a lot of people here who use their credit card. So I don't disagree that it might be a good idea. I think we need more time to implement a no resident credit card strategy. Because I think it'll be a bigger deal.
I think we should see how much of an impact it is. I don't think it's gonna be a big impact. I think most people, you feel that it will.
I see people use their credit cards, and I've talked to people who say, we won't put it on our account, we only use a credit card. So it might actually deter business if I've heard enough of it that I'm worried about it. I say not using the credit card on the accounts is fine. I think people know that's coming.
Right.
So that we just need to get a notice of like this week about what's happening. But I think to just ban credit cards for residents in the property might be an
This
issue.
is what we said we were gonna do.
Right.
There's probably not big harm in a stepwise process just to see how much is it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. The intent was we would save like $30,000 thousand.
$30,000.
Okay.
Like, part of the problem started, remember, there was a time when the accounts were not necessarily accurate, right? People were getting charges on their account that weren't theirs.
Yes.
Some people have memories in this community, right? So
You got nothing else.
there are people that may never use a credit card, I mean, they will never use their account ever again. Yeah, so anyway.
All right,
agree.
We'll see how it goes. But the intent was to save $35,000.
Right.
We end up not doing
You can say, I told you so.
Well, maybe you losing market share.
All right, any other questions for Ricardo wise? And then I'll just go real quick with the rest.
that. I suggest you keep your door closed.
Yes.
Thank you.
So just real quickly, what's happening, we already talked about the food side, what we're doing, to control costs. We're still implementing server training all the time because we can always get better at doing that. Our hamburger and pasta nights have been very, very popular. We're averaging between 120 and we had 160 some odd people here for pasta night, and it ran really smoothly. It was great. We are currently in the middle of, we're gonna install 2 more TVs out on the patio. So we can expand our La Sala out on the patio and people can go outside. Those of you who attended the Monday Night Football, that was a great event. We ran out of space in the La Sala. We had 50 plus people and they watched the football game. They were all in there, but I think if we can pull some people, they can watch it outside, especially with the weather getting better. That would be a great opportunity there. When I first came here, card games was a big issue. And we haven't heard too much of any complaints. So we're working very closely with the card players as well as staff so that we can communicate if we have to move tables because of meetings. And again, just we're coming up with solutions. And I think that's the best thing that we can do for not just card players, but any kind of issues we have. Sunday brunch is one of those other things that has been a big concern, but as I've gone over the past few months, it's less than 1% of the total. Because it's the same people that have issue. So I might hear it 20 times, but it's the same 10 or less people. The people that I have spoken with that had issue, I've invited them to come, try the a la carte, and they have, and they love it. In fact, some of them are here every Sunday because they like the a la carte. So I think that was a great decision on our part financially. And, it's different. When people are used to doing the same thing all the time, that's what they want. But when they try something new, oh, this really works. So, we're in the stage of educating the community about what's out there now and how we do things. And it's just being consistent with that message and educating people on that. So.
Bernard, I have a question about that. You had talked a while ago, and I can't remember in what venue, but about possibly doing a buffet once in a while, just to clear inventory and that kind of thing. Is that still on the table, or is it, you're just gonna stick with a la carte?
I think we're gonna stick with the a la carte for
Just
now,
wanted to check.
because we're working on the inventory daily. So where we're really got the inventory down, so like Ken said, at one point, our freezer was full. But, working with the chef, hey, let's do this special, let's do this, and just reallocating proteins into different menu items works very well.
Thank you.
Before you leave that, Bernard, just a quick thing on the brunch thing, because it's a little big thing. I'm wondering if you might want to think about it during, say, holiday times when people's families are here. I'm just curious, if you might want to do that. But I think the other piece of that is making sure we communicate that to the community so they understand what's happening, I think will be important.
Okay, yes, I will do that. And, like Thanksgiving brunch, we added a third seating and all we have is 50 seats left. Our new seating at 3:30 and 1:30 was sold within 2 hours. And we have 50 because it's at 11:30. So that's been good. We started doing the employee meals where they pay 50% instead of providing meals every day. The club should realize a savings of $20,000 on that. So, so far so good. That's worked out well.
That was mentioned, I read it in the report last time you weren't here. I'll just say, now that you are here, I'm against that.
Okay.
I don't think it's a good policy. I think that people that work in the field have come to accept that there'll be a meal provided My own opinion is if people are gonna go to Subway to get a sandwich or go down to Wendy's or this or that, you're gonna deal with who's late. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea, but you're the one running the ship. So let's see how it goes, but it very well could become late getting back. Also, we've lately had a problem keeping staff, and other places do offer a meal. I don't know if it's a good idea.
Again, I got, cut off on some communication when this was being discussed last time. It's pretty standard in food and beverage industry that employee meals are provided. Is that not correct?
It's 50-50, honestly. Large hotels provide meals for their employees, and I've been a part of every single one of them to where, they get a discount, they get free meal, whatever the case may be. And, I think once the policy is put out, I think, employees will, adhere to whatever the policy is. And like I said, I've been a part of both scenarios where it's not an issue either way. It's, oh, I get free meal, or, oh, because 50% is still a good deal. And some people want to buy what they want to buy. They don't want to be stuck with, butternut squash ravioli.
I was gonna say, so when you did the free meals, it was what was left over.
Correct.
It wasn't you can order and get whatever you want.
No.
I think too, the thing that's important to remember, is with a lot of staff going into the kitchen, it's disruptive. I'm speaking from personal experience because I cooked my way through college, and it can be very disruptive to have staff in the kitchen during service looking for food. And I think it's also, you don't want staff in the kitchen because it can be a risk if it's a safety issue, it's potential health code violations. I think there are a number of reasons that we need to consider.
I was bringing it up only to differentiate between food and beverage staff and the rest
And
of
the rest of the
world.
house, yeah.
Because I think we were feeding the rest of the world, and it never made sense to me.
Yeah.
But if you think it's gonna work with the food and beverage staff, and they're okay with it, then fine. But one thing to consider may be treat food and beverage different from everybody else.
Sure.
The other thing I'll say is that,
Because I agree with
We
you,
have-
but you don't want POA and
oh, of course,
everybody else going in.
no, but I'm talking about the wait staff here, the kitchen staff and whatever. We always have, I assume, we always have leftovers because we do have some buffets here and there. And rather than see that food simply wind up in the dumpster, that's a complete waste. So,
Well, and that's why, not having buffets.
no, but Thanksgiving's coming up, and
Sure,
we're gonna have.
absolutely.
I remember last year talking about the inventive ways to have turkey.
Yeah.
That went on for days and
Absolutely.
days and days,
Absolutely.
better than throwing it out.
Absolutely.
Let's
And
feed some people with it.
and we're also cooking properly, the amounts, so there's not too much left over.
Bernard was hired for his expertise and experience. And I think he's showing it well by looking at the numbers here today.
As I said, he's the one at the steering wheel. He's running the ship here. So just my opinion.
All I'm saying is duly noted.
You're gonna miss that.
I had two other-
Yeah, you're gonna miss
Yeah, you
it.
should have done that. I should have added that.
One of them, we have a new tennis director, and have you gotten any comments from the tennis rackets committee or other residents about maintenance of the tennis courts? Is it, because one of the things that Dave did in here was, everybody said how much better condition the courts were in. Are you hearing anything different since?
Not so much.
So stay tuned.
But I'm I'm also going out there 3-4 times a week. I'm trying to learn it myself, so I'm working very closely with Sam. I don't know nothing about tennis, but I also understand the maintenance side now. And, we're getting the proper tools, giving them the tools to do that. And with Juan being here as well, he's not necessarily a tennis maintenance guy, but I think once we get all the tools that we need in, we're gonna get this thing to where it's consistent. So,
That was a big deal.
yeah.
Second thing, more for Ricardo, I guess, or Therese. So we're starting to see better reports coming out of the Jonas system, which I think is great. I'm gonna meet with Ricardo after the meeting about sales reporting, revenue reporting, rather than just covers and, the daily report, which I think is a great tool for you guys. But as I was compiling the covers from the reports that Therese sent me, on a spreadsheet, I'm sitting there saying to myself, why am I doing this? We have a company that we pay to report to the board. We've got benchmarks we're trying to put in place for you guys. Why aren't you doing the reports? And I'm sitting there saying, why am I doing all this?
Well, and that's part of why we, as a company, brought Ricardo in.
Yeah.
Because, our people, they're food and beverage people. And to produce reports, we have to kind of create it as we go, and if we don't know the system, then it can be done. But now we can have a person here that can create the reports, especially the ones that you guys are looking for.
Well, and I'm thinking as a board, we should come up with, okay, these are the things we would like to
Yes.
see. I don't think we should be seeing a report, for example, that says, here's what we sold today, every item.
Yeah.
That's for you to manage.
Correct.
But for us to oversee how we're doing against the key performance indicators that we should formally establish better, there's a small series of reports we should be getting. So we should come up with how we think it ought to be done, show it to the rest of the board and say, this is what we're gonna be issuing, weekly, monthly, whatever. And the same would go to the finance committee, and, which I assume one or both of you will be joining us at our meetings each month to talk
Yes.
about results.
Yeah, that's one thing. So we had to, before I developed the KPIs, that's why I wanted to get with you and see what the board wants to see. So we, instead of just throwing a ton of numbers out there, it's okay, which are the KPIs you want to see and the format that you want to see it, so I don't give you information that's unnecessary, or it's just going to be a waste of time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And if you have particular requests, maybe send them to Ricardo, and, because everybody's gonna have different thoughts on it. Let's come up with one set of reports or plans that we can do, and that we all get, we all see the same information, and we're not throwing, tons of questions out there that are just redundant. And he ends up spending all his time answering questions and not helping manage.
Just a couple more things. We made some personnel changes. Obviously, Ricardo's one change. We've moved Stephanie into the front desk area. She's going to be working more with marketing, getting communications out to the community, and more importantly, she's going to be taking care of resident relations. So anything the residents need, new people coming in, she's going to be taking care of that. Obviously, we know that Miles is no longer with us. Juan is now with us full time, which is, he's a hard worker. He's been a dedicated Vesta employee for several years now at different properties, as well as coming back and forth here. So, he drives an hour away, and that's his dedication. He stays till when he needs to stay, and he's a great asset. We are looking currently to bring in another person to assist him as well. So I'm working on that. And then, of course, Sam is our new tennis person. You know, he's a good kid. He works hard. He wants to do the right thing, and I think he'll do a great job for us. And then you all have met Jen Van Luters. Last week, she is working on our catering menus, the design of it. She's working on our new website, the pictures and all that. And she's been an asset as well. But I think that just shows really the commitment of Vesta. They're bringing in people from every part of our company to help assist in making it great here. So that's our commitment. That's my commitment here as the general manager. And we want things to be vibrant here and profitable as well. That's all. Yes, sir.
Question. Important question. What's going on with the pizza?
So the pizza oven, we're probably looking at about 2 to 3 weeks on delivery. That's what they say. So we're looking at hopefully rolling it out 1 January because we want to practice. We want to, you know, take orders. We want to see how all the logistics of it. And again, we want it to be awesome when we roll it out. So we're meeting every week with the staff logistics. We call it the pizza logistics meeting. Hey, what kind of boxes? Did you order the boxes? What are we doing for the phone calls? Who's answering the phone calls? All of these things we are processing, strategizing, so that when the consumer calls, it's the easiest, fastest, and best way that we can get the pizzas to them. So. That's it.
Thank you, Bernard.
Thank you.
Supervisors, before we move into additional reports, we do have LMP here. Do we want to move into item number 5D? Which is the discussion and consideration of the proposals for the Medici Terrace Medjool Palm replacements. This is behind tab number 5.
Yeah, we discussed that at the workshop, so we can move into that.
Been a long discussion at the workshop about the bids and about the fact that we don't just have 2 palms that need replacements, we actually have 5. We have Medici Terrace, we have Vicenza, we have Verano Court, and we have Mestre Place, both east and west. So 5 different cul-de-sacs that require replacements. So what we talked about in the meeting was I would like to request approval for replacement of these with a not to exceed $50,000 with 2 caveats. One being that we take it to the Landscape Committee on the 18th where Kimley Horn will be present, and we ask them for their opinion on what kind of palm, including what we saw this morning about the,
Puerto Rican ad.
thank you, the Puerto Rican, which I've never heard of.
Yeah.
It looks like a really great palm. So we will take that to Kimley Horn, we'll ask them that, we'll ask them if we're doing the right replacements, and we won't do anything until we have their approval as our landscape architect. And secondly, we will check on an interlocal purchasing possibility with the government, since we are a government organization, to see if we can get better pricing.
Piggybacking.
Yeah, piggybacking on their pricing. So we're gonna do those 2 things, but I would like to request, that was a very long motion, you don't have to put that all in there, but I would like to request approval of a not to exceed $50,000 to replace 5 palms with Kimley Horn approval and intergovernmental piggybacking if possible.
And consideration of other types of palm.
With the Kimley Horn, yeah.
And the funding is all there because of the hurricane assessment.
Yes.
So we're good with all of that.
Well, it's not a matter of funding. I just wonder, and I apologize, because in the workshop, we were kind of all in the same place. But I just wonder with all the options we're now considering, whether we should table this. I hate to do it, but table it until the next meeting when you can research the open questions.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
And a big difference between cost of palm.
It got a lot bigger right now than,
I'll get recommendation, or I'll get some quotes from Hazeltine and LMP and a couple others on these type of palms that it was suggested. That's a great price.
And Kimley Horn might come back and say, don't do either one of those. This is what we're
Do the way
recommending.
I-
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
they may.
we don't know.
Yeah, they may. I appreciate the fact that you want to move quickly.
Yeah.
I wanted to just ask Tyler, that picture, was that from Hazeltine?
Yes, it's the one, right? The picture on page 1
Yeah,
is the palm, it's on Terrabella Court. You see it's
Right.
leaning
no, but
in.
the Mexican hat palm
The
is that.
second page is the Puerto Rican
Give credit where
Hat.
credit's due.
palm. It's about 20 feet tall. It's right in front of the business office at Hazeltine Nursery.
Thank you,
Looks exactly like the other palm.
thank you.
All right, so Cheryl had made a motion. Do you want to
So
withdraw
I'm
it?
gonna withdraw the motion. We will work on Monday and we'll come back to the next meeting. I'm okay with that, yeah. This did get more legs since we had
Well,
that.
we discussed tabling at the workshop.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, that's fine.
I hate to go on the record, because I'm gonna regret this in the future, but I think Mr. Casals actually had a good suggestion.
My other one, we're good? Yeah, well, Ken, I'm thankful that you guys even listened. This is like the first time.
We always listen.
You listen, but you don't react.
Okay, moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keith, did you have anything to report?
Up at the front gate, when we start the changing over the program and all that, we're just waiting on some equipment to come in. Should be here later in this week, beginning of next. And that'll all get installed, and then we'll start training staff on, the guards, on how that new system is gonna work up there, the implementation of it. And then once they get trained up, and we do that training, the 1st of December is when he is scheduling to do those training. There'll be a couple different trainings. And then we'll start rolling it out to the residents with mass emails about how you can get your guests into the community and what it takes to use those new things, your phones, the whole 9 yards. So that'll start sometime in December.
Yeah, that's another big communication
Oh, yeah.
project. It's gotta get out. Start planting the seeds now that it's coming, so there's not surprise December 1st or whenever.
And we're gonna be able to see what the cleanup looks like, or what are we doing about, I mean, obviously, there's probably a ton of RFIDs out there that are,
Well,
non-valid.
the inactive ones have been deactivated, I believe.
And I think the process has to be clear for getting a new one.
Yeah, we're gonna use the existing.
We're gonna
ones,
use the existing.
Right.
but everything now is gonna be tied to your address.
Because there are RFIDs out there for people who don't live here.
That are very active and haven't been deactivated but aren't
Yes.
proper.
However, yeah, exactly.
So everything will be tied to an address. When a new person comes in with the address, the old address, right? Let's say I move into 235 Portofino.
Right.
All right, then whoever lived there is automatically taken out, right? So it'll rejuvenate itself that way as well. When you haven't used a pass or for the last year and a half, we've been taking those out. Now, I don't know how you go about,
Can you identify people who have RFIDs that don't live here?
We do have, golf members,
Yeah, we have
Yes.
some.
Those are, I get those,
golf members.
but there are others.
Well, there are others, friends and family,
Yeah.
who have gotten their RFIDs. So I think we need to address those somehow.
Well, as far as outside residents who are golf members, we have for years allowed them to have entry to the community. So we're not going to stop those folks.
No, those are fine,
No,
but
no,
there
no.
are others.
Yes.
Yes, I know a couple as well.
Yes, yeah.
And I
we'll
don't
work on
think we
that
need
too,
to identify.
when,
The golf members will have access, but they won't have this other tool that residents will have
Right,
about
of course.
putting guests.
Right, right.
I guess all I'm asking for is understanding the process. But I don't know whether there's an easy way to communicate that or not.
to communicate it to?
I'm just wanting to I'm wanting to understand the background of what we're doing to make sure not only that the RFIDs are clean, but what the process is going forward to ensure that it
That
stays
doesn't get
clean.
abused.
That's what I'm after.
And from my perspective, I'm okay with the process going forward. I'm concerned about what's happened in the past. And so my question is, can you even figure out who has an RFID that doesn't live here? Or would that require replacement of the RFIDs? And so you don't have to answer that now, but if that's the case, then I think I have my answer, because that doesn't make sense to replace them all. But it would be nice if we could have some kind of a report. That would be my request. to figure
I'll
out.
ask if that can happen, within what's there now.
I think we can.
Because if a certain address has 7 RFIDs, you know there's maybe an issue there.
And some of them may not even, well, some, yeah.
I thought we were gonna try to get people to fill out new forms who have changed cars, different license plate, because we don't have all the license plate information, I think, from the historical database.
Correct.
And so I think the attempt will be to get people to complete new information at the same time.
And that was the intent to piggyback these things.
Well, definitely when we do the access to the amenities, that's going to happen.
Okay.
But again, the same thing that would be tied to an address. And there's only one device, I believe, per household for residents. Now, that won't solve your problem about, I believe we can get a list of non-resident address tags. The question is, what do you do with it?
Well, I think it
Because
depends
we
on how
don't
big
know all
it
the
is.
golf members.
Right.
There are a few, not many, non-resident River Club members. That's a small handful. But then, once you have the information, Cheryl, I'm not sure what we can do with it.
And I think it depends on the size of the list. I mean, if the list is
Yeah, we can go to the
100,
golf club.
we can figure it out. If the list is 1,000, that is a whole different problem. So I would really like to see the list. I mean, I think that would help.
I'll get with Paul
I
and
think
come up with a solution.
I think Paul said he could do that.
And the list would be by address.
Everything's gonna be address driven.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
My pleasure.
I do have a few items for the board. Volunteer coverage. I was able to obtain pricing for volunteer coverage. It's minimal. We need a break.
No, I had.
Oh, you had questions for Keith? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ken.
So, Keith, how are we in terms of water use versus the golf club? Are you seeing, are they staying within their allocation?
Well, the golf course pays for whatever they use, and we pay for what we use. We get a monthly report from Jay about the usage of the golf course and what we use. We haven't seen a huge spike in fact, this month was really low in the usage just because of the hurricanes, everything was turned off. But there hasn't been, now during the summers, yeah, it gets quite a bit more. But I haven't seen anything where it's over the top. I had talked to Jay about their usage the other day. He said that they've overseeded.
Yeah.
And did some other things, that they needed to water more. I noticed when I was out on the golf course, the other day, there was a lot of wet spots. And, he had stated that the overseeding and is why that is like that. But on a general rule, I don't see any huge, that they're way over what they're, and there's not really a set amount, all right? And that,
Well, they used to
What
be.
is a Swift money limit?
Yeah, we have an agreement. I don't remember all of the details of it, but we have an agreement where each one has their own meter and we read them and things along those lines.
Yes.
And if they're over, it's on their dime, it's not on us.
Well, it's on us if we get into a penalty
Exactly,
situation.
$10,000 a day.
But if they're the ones that are, not that there is any abuse, but if it was, would the fine be on them, not on us?
I don't think so, because I've looked at the Swift Mud website, and I think what they do is it's over 2 years, and then they divide it by 2, so it is sort of an average, but I believe we're all on the same permit.
But from the numbers that you're getting, it isn't a problem.
I haven't seen any huge, where they look like they're, leaving things running.
It just seems like they're doing a
Lot of
tremendous
water.
amount of watering.
Well, I think they had some irrigation problems too, and that's why some places were very wet.
No, I'm sure.
That whole golf course needs to be replumbed.
Yes, yes,
No kidding.
everything.
You're right.
I have a super quick question for you, Keith. I think it's a quick one. I had an email inquiry from somebody about some missing community association signs that were put up for an event. Do we know, is it possible that the gate pulled those? Do we have
They
any
didn't pull them,
idea?
they said they didn't pull
They don't
them.
know what happened?
I've got,
Okay.
Paul looking at the video to
Okay.
see who
Oh,
we
yeah, I'm
can,
just curious if there was.
see who we can do it.
Yeah.
But, no, the gate, there've been multiple signs out there
Yeah,
talking
that's
about
why I
that.
was like, I
And
figured
they've
it couldn't
never
have been a
pulled
change
any of
there.
it.
Okay.
In fact, the sticks that go into the ground, the middle thing, they're still there. So if it had been the gate guards,
They
they
would
pulled the
pull
whole thing and they set them behind the gatehouse. That's what they're supposed to do, and they keep them for a week if somebody wants their things back, but never, I'll get with Paul today. I talked to him about that on Friday with him, about looking at the video to see if he could see, whoever it was that pulled those up. And it was it was before 6 a.m. That's when the new guy came on, because he didn't see him. And so it was sometime during that night that it happened.
These were community association signs?
Yeah, it was
advertising an event?
advertisement, yeah.
Yeah, the book reading.
Somebody want that?
Well, I don't know, that's why I thought, well, maybe there was a change, somebody didn't understand something, who knows, but anyway. No hair on that.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Before we move on, does anybody need a break?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll take a 10-minute break. All right, 10-minute break at 11:01 a.m.
Yeah. Have a little recording of you.
Okay, and we are back on the record at 11:11 a.m. I did have a couple of items for the board. Volunteer coverage, Aegis did provide me with pricing for volunteer coverage. It's minimal, it's $850. This would provide, coverage for volunteers that would assist with the pickleball courts, tennis courts. And I did ask regarding the HRT team, and it would also cover the HRT team as well. The only item we would have to implement would be the waivers. Andy has a waiver that his office prepares that would need to be signed by each volunteer.
I think we should do it.
I have a question.
Yeah. I'll
Sure.
make that as a motion.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
The waiver, if we're insuring them, what is the waiver? Just help me, I have a little conflict in my brain.
Nothing is ever airtight, okay? So it's just an added layer. It's like a belt and suspenders type of thing.
So we'll insure you, but beyond that, or if it's something else.
And the waiver is not, we have everyone sign waiver, plays pickleball, and things along those lines. It's better than nothing. Is it an absolute protector? Hey, you signed this, you can't sue me? No, but it's just an added layer of protection, and it's something that he just typically looks for.
Got it, thank you.
So the limits on the policy would be $1 million bodily injury per accident, bodily injury by disease, $1 million. That's the policy limit, and bodily injury per person would be $1 million. So, I mean, it's a minimal cost.
What kind of deductible?
This one doesn't have a deductible
Oh,
because it's a workers' comp policy, so it's covered through a workers' comp.
I think it makes sense, makes sense for a relatively small amount of money for us to provide that coverage, so I'll make a motion that we move forward with the volunteer coverage.
Second.
As described.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Okay, so I'll have the insurance company file the coverage as of today,
Now, preparing for waiver.
and Andy will prepare the waiver. Moving on to FEMA news, we did receive a determination memo from FEMA. They have denied the district's claim for the debris removal. Their determination is based off of what we've discussed, which is the cost associated with using the facilities for the River Club. At this point, the board can elect to appeal and file an appeal. We would have to file the appeal by I think it's January 5th, but I just want to make sure. It is January 5th. So we have the deadline to submit the appeal, January 5th. So the way the appeal works is we have to submit it to both FEMA and the Florida Division of Emergency Management as well.
Do you have all the information together to prepare that appeal?
Well, it's a process. So I wouldn't be the only person working on the appeal. I would need to work on this with, I've been working with Amy Farrington from Andy's office on an appeal for another district. We've already been through the process, so we're pretty familiar with how it works. This district was also denied for the same reasons as well. So I'm pretty sure Amy, or Andy, I'm not sure if it'll be you or Amy, but.
Sure. As Belinda said, I'm not surprised. I don't think any of us are surprised. We have another district in Manatee County, similar, not exactly, but similar situation. Amy Farrington from my office worked on that appeal. In fact, Belinda and her were submitting it during Hurricane Milton. It was a little ironic. But, so that's something we could work on if the board wanted to. I cannot, as well, you've also discussed, I cannot make you any promises. I don't know, whether it would be successful or not. But if it's something that you wanted to pursue, we could assist you with that.
What are the grounds for the appeal?
Well, I probably have to have Amy explain that to you. It's a tough road. It's an uphill battle, but we did feel that we had some things to argue.
There's a cost associated with this, with your services.
Yes, there is.
As well as your services, right? So what are we doing?
How much is an issue? Let's talk about that first.
Well, we have not billed a district for any of the work that we've put into this whatsoever. I mean, my focus has been in moving forward with this to try to get the district obligated, which has always been the goal. So the amount requested was $157,504.14. This is just for the debris removal portion of it. So this is just your category A debris removal project.
And the rejection is because we have a private facility?
It's not a private facility. They don't consider it open to the public because of the fee associated. The argument, what the appeal would entail an argument arguing that the district should receive funding from FEMA because technically we are a public facility. But because of the fee associated, they seem to take issue with districts that are charging fees and locations that have some sort of an access control / security system where you may need a fob access to access the facilities.
Yeah, so far today, and I don't know if Belinda can add
anything further, but I personally am not aware of any community that has been granted assistance unless it had to do with non-gated, so like outside the gates, things along those lines. So far, doesn't mean we can't be successful on an appeal. We filed an appeal at this community, it's Greyhawk Landing in Manatee County. Similar situation, they are gated, they have amenities facilities. They, just like really every CDD that has amenities facilities, have a non-resident membership fee. That's always been sufficient for bond counsel, for tax councils all over the state. But FEMA is taking a stand on this particular issue in terms of granting funding. Now, that being said, Greyhawk has appealed. Belinda and I have CDD in Lee County. They made a decision not to appeal and just move forward. So it's up to you.
And the rough order of magnitude cost of the appeal?
It's just a rough order and it all depends on where it goes. Obviously, if we file something like, oh, you're right, we messed up, it's going to be a lot less than if, we're carrying it further and further. I don't see it costing $157,000, but it will be, I'm just ballparking it, 15,000, somewhere in that range.
Well, 10%.
I hate to let this go, but I also hate this current sitting board right here to make this decision. Today's my last day on this board. We have 2 other people coming in, and I don't feel comfortable obligating the board for this without getting input from the 2 incoming board members. My heart of hearts, how many project managers have you had? 10? Went from person to person. We heard stories from you about, give me the geographic coordinates of where each tree was. Oh, no, I don't need that. It went on and on and on and on. And I hate to see it let go. I think that we have to hold them accountable for this. Now, we may lose the battle, but again, I don't feel comfortable saying let's go forward. But if today were not my last day on this board, I would put in a motion that we move forward on it, because I think we should.
And I'm gonna give the other side of the coin, which is, although it drives me crazy, having worked with FEMA before, I think our chances of winning are not that high. I would say they're not over 50% for sure. And my concern is that then we're on the hook for $50,000. So we're not only now have the debris removal expense, but another 50 grand for trying to get FEMA to pay, which,
It's just 50.
15.
oh, I thought you said 50.
One five.
Oh, I feel better now.
Again, it's just a ballpark,
I
okay?
feel
Don't hold me
the
to
turn
it, so
up.
I said 1
That's
5.
only if you say yes today.
If I wait. Oh, thank you. Okay, I feel better already.
1.5 is just for your fee.
Right.
Okay, there's a fee associated for Belinda's company. So that's,
Maybe, they haven't yet, but it could come down the road.
oh,
I mean, we really haven't, we haven't billed anything for all the work we've put into this.
And you don't plan to?
I honestly
Just so we
haven't really considered billing any of my time because my focus has been on moving forward and trying to get this obligated. I can have a discussion with Scott, but I don't think that it'll be a huge amount. I really don't. I did have one district obligated, and this district is in Cape Coral, very different circumstances. The majority of the debris removal was outside the gates of the community. So there was nothing that was done inside. When the program delivery manager told me it was obligated, I almost fell out of my chair because I couldn't believe it, but they were actually paid and
That's what I'm
closed
saying
out.
too. When you have things outside the gates and perimeter community, or if you have county-owned roads, things along those lines. But I mean, like I said, we're trying to put everything up front, but never say never, but.
And so far, I've been the only one to have one district obligated.
I don't have any that they've given a thumbs up on yet. There's still a few out there. In fact, there's quite a few that we're still waiting to hear on.
It does take a little bit of time to work on the appeal. Amy and I were going back and forth on this other district, and unfortunately, our timeline was limited to when the hurricane occurred, but we were able to submit everything properly. But it all depends on what she feels we have to attach as backup documentation. This is a little more extensive. If you recall the 40, 50 invoices for LMP, all the backup, there was a lot of work because I had to have a lot of the invoices revised to the proper rates, reduced. All of that is done. I'm pretty sure I can just grab everything from where I need it and submit it to her based on what she needs.
So, given Rich's comment about being a little uncomfortable because there's a new board coming in to make this decision, would you need the decision made today in order to get this done?
My concern is your next meeting is on December 9th. So we're gonna have holidays in between and your deadline for your appeals, January 5th. I'm not saying we can't do it. I don't know if Amy can. I mean, I'm not gonna be traveling or anything around that time, but I just don't know the timeline as to whether or not she'll have everything that she needs to be able to prepare the appeal.
Well, and I guess two things. One, they're both here. We could ask them. Second, are they gonna feel in a position to be able to vote yes or no intelligently without, I mean, they've probably heard a lot of the conversation, but they haven't been on board through this whole process.
Well, that's a good point. We've all lived through it.
You guys
We've lived through
are
it.
educated.
No, they don't have any vote yet, okay?
but at least
No, they might have
under
a
the statute.
But you can ask, right, you can ask for audience comments.
Can I ask a question? That's a question? I understand the issue with this being a private club, but the fact that the roads are public and we can't restrict access doesn't offset that in some way?
Well, that's what we tried.
Hold on, this is not a private club either.
Okay, wait.
Yeah, so everything is public. This is, but we have,
I meant pay for access.
right. And as you said, we have a non-resident membership fee, but it is a public club. The roads are public. You don't have to pay to drive on the roads. But we do have we controlled access as opposed to denial of access. And these are some of the things, right or wrong, that FEMA has thrown up to districts as they've been going through this process. Despite the fact that they paid back at like Ian for a number of my districts, but now this is a new thing that has come up. Honestly, there's less money to go around. There's more storms. So I think that they are being a little bit more choosy. We heard with the most recent storms, like with Milton and such, we heard members of government saying that they're just going to pay. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that, obviously. So there's a whole host of issues at play. All we really can do is relate to you, which we have, what Belinda and I's experiences have been, but they could grant yours. They could not. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't want to give you any sort of false promises based on what we've seen so far.
What kind of costs are we trying to recoup?
I'm sorry.
We didn't, if we're gonna do
We
this, we
haven't
have
opened
to.
the floor.
I'm
Right.
sorry.
So it's up to
Make a
you.
motion that we open the floor.
Second.
Okay.
So my question is, what type of costs are we trying, thank you. What type of costs are we trying to recoup?
This is for debris removal within the community, and I just heard Belinda say it's about it's 157,000 and change.
Okay, thank you.
I'm inclined to go forward.
I am too.
This is for Ian.
Now that I know the number.
That's just
Had you clarified?
Were there any other
Right,
public
true.
comments? Let's close public comment.
The fact that our non-resident cost for the amenities is no more than what residents pay. I mean, it's equal. I mean, that's an argument that we're not asking the public to pay any more than.
Sure, because the public pays O&M, absolutely.
I don't know. I think it's worth pursuing.
Well,
FEMA's
I
under,
already-
I don't know.
I already said I wanted to pursue it, so.
Have we asked for congressional help?
Yeah.
Every Sunday I get a note from this guy.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we pursue an appeal on the denial that we got from FEMA.
Second.
Before you vote, let me ask you a question, Belinda. We had debris removal. We had another denial that I believe the board elected not to move forward on. That was just a smaller,
Street sign.
yeah, it was a very small amount, fencing or something along those lines. Okay, so are we waiting for any other determinations for this community? Okay, I just want to make sure.
So it's just this one at 157,000 change?
Correct.
Okay, any other questions? Can we call it?
All those in favor, please stand.
Aye.
Are you in favor?
No.
Duly noted.
Thank you. Just a note, supervisors, for some of the committee members, there have been a few committee members with email issues, and it's because some are opening phishing emails. So their emails are going to be, in a way, clean, but at the same time, passwords are being reset. So if you hear of a committee member expressing that they're having email issues, this is probably why. There have been some phishing attempts noted on several email accounts. I think someone on one of the committees probably opened a phishing email, then forwarded the phishing email to someone else, and that's how it got started. So Amber is going to be reaching out to some of the committee members that their passwords need to be reset for. But it's happening a lot more now than what it used to in the past. Some of these hackers are getting very creative. So just as a note, if a committee member does mention it, they should contact Amber and she'll make sure that their passwords are reset if they're having problems. Any questions for me?
How do we set our password for, what do we do for communications? There's no need now, so.
Well, you'll still have your email up until the date that the new supervisors take their seats. So then, once that happens, your emails would be transferred over to the new supervisors.
Okay, you will do it.
Yes, Amber will take care of
I
it,
can use my iPad as I see.
correct.
Yep.
So that'll be, November 19th?
Second Tuesday following the election.
So it's that.
I have one more question for you,
Sure.
which is, did I miss it? Did you send out the list of all the committees and whose member terms were up?
I don't think I did, but if you need it, I can send it.
I got one of mine, but I didn't get the other kid. But I would kind of like to see them all to see numbers and turnover and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
And there really hasn't been a huge response to the emails sent out requesting those interested to submit their intents. So there'll probably be another one.
Okay.
If we're gonna, when we do that, I guess, Belinda, a suggestion I ask you to consider is that, I think if we put either a link to where people can find the charters or maybe a short description of each of the committees, it might pique a little bit of interest. There's a little bit more information in the email that goes out, I think may help.
I think what we can probably do is just put the charters on the website and then add a link onto the email and they can just click it and just go straight to the website. I think that'll be easier.
I think it'd be great. Okay, super, thank you.
And just to note on the financial statements, Vanessa's working on the financials. Ricardo sent over the worksheets on Friday. So she's gonna try to work on them to try to get them out, hopefully within the next few days.
Yeah, it sounds like there's gonna be some changes to the Vesta statements, because Vanessa agreed the entries to clean up the due to from account should be September, so that will change what was sent over. I don't think it'd be a quick turnaround on it.
Yes.
Maybe check out a couple of the other questions.
Okay, I'll check with her. She sent me the draft for review, so I'll be talking to her probably later today. Okay, any questions for me? Moving on, we now have item number 5A, which is the discussion and direction for implementing the amenities entry ID software process.
Excuse me, do you want to go back to the website for it?
It's just a clean audit, nothing really to report there. Website is ADA compliant.
Okay, done.
I don't think there's any update on this. It's been delayed because of the gate access project, which will now get moving again. But I don't know that anything further on Stephanie's side has been done regarding the amenity side of it. Are you aware of anything?
No.
Bernardo, I assume no changes there.
So do I leave this on the agenda for the next meeting or as a pending item?
It's definitely pending. Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I would just keep it as an open item.
I wanted to mention to you, Ken, on this, I had a really brief chat with Sue, whose last name I don't remember, from Grand Manners. I was at the POA meeting talking about the gate thing where I went and presented in front of the POA board. And she seems to have some good input and ideas on how to implement the amenities access rollout and managing ID and stuff from people. So if it's helpful at all to you, I can get from Ray, or you can get from Ray Sue's contact information. I think
Sure.
she's his boss, but she had some good input.
Yeah, I did. I've talked to a couple of others.
Yeah,
on
she
how
was,
they did it.
yeah. And she said, for example, like vehicle registration is a really good one because it's a public document. So anyway, Sue from Grand Matters.
Oh,
Okay. Moving on to item number 5B, the consideration and approval of the interfund loan process and priorities.
okay. This was put together because of the need to do a capital loan from one fund to another.
This is
For
something for the pizza.
the River Club, for the pizza oven, among possibly other things. So at the time it was brought up, how do we, which fund do we gain access from, and so on and so forth. So we had talked about this, and then I brought it to the Finance Reserve Committee. We talked about it in that committee as well, and came up with this hierarchy, if you would. All this is intended to do is to say, this will kind of make sense from our perspective of, go here first, and then if those funds aren't available, then you go here next. So this is just documenting that process.
Well, and if, board need to have your discussion, but if everybody comes to an agreement, then I'll prepare a resolution that will memorialize this and present it at your next agenda so they can have it in the records.
Okay. But the gist of it was basically you stay within the family of
Yes.
funds first
Right.
before you go outside to
Yes.
another reserve fund. So if it's River Club capital, you borrow from the River Club reserve first. If there aren't funds available there, then you might go to a general fund capital or reserve account. That's the only reason we documented it.
Makes sense.
Right, then I'll prepare a resolution for presentation at the next agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we now have item number 5C, which is the consideration of the fifth addendum to the contract for professional amenity services. This is behind tab number 4 for your review.
It's pretty straightforward, huh?
I would move it. I would move it.
Yeah, and I have no problem with any of the legal language.
Standard stuff.
This is what we budgeted.
Yes.
I think it was straightforward.
Yes.
I had asked for a breakdown of the elements and a year-over-year comparison of the increase. And I'm only saying this so it's on the record because I was kind of annoyed, Melinda, by your compatriots. I thought it was a simple request. And the first response back was, well, it was approved in the budget. So, just accept it. I'm saying, well, seriously, people, I don't want names, and I said, I don't want individual salaries or anything. If you can break it down to categories of, salaries, benefits, whatever, and give me a year-to-year comparison. So after they all apparently got together and huddled, they sent me a breakdown with a comparison. But the comparison was budget over budget. Well, but I knew the estimate was lower than the budget. So the year-over-year increase is really higher than what they were presenting to me. So I went back again and said, this is budget to budget, but can you compare what the current estimate is, or actual, you may have it now because the year is over, to this. And I have never got a response. So it's I just found it troubling that we as the customer, we as the client, couldn't get a simple answer. And it's if the math is too hard, give me the numbers and I'll calculate it. It's just, but just to ignore it, and I just found it frustrating. I'm not gonna vote against it because it isn't in the approved budget. I just wanted to see, is it 5.5%? Is it 8.5%? Can you break it down? And I couldn't get an answer. So just an irritant.
You may remember the year prior, I'd asked the question about the breakdown, and it was,
Pulling
God,
teeth.
it was pulling teeth.
Yeah. But be that as it may, I won't vote against it.
You gonna make a motion or should I make? a
No.
I already made.
Yeah, I think-
Okay, second.
Any further discussion?
That was it.
All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Ken, could you copy me on that last email, please?
I'm sorry?
Copy me on the last email you sent so I can send that to Scott.
Okay. I don't think Scott was on any of the emails.
He wasn't, but I want to send it to him. All right. Moving forward, we're going to go into item number 6A, which is the consideration of the minutes of the Board of Supervisors meeting held on October 14th, 2024. These are behind tab number 6 for your review. Are there any questions, comments, and/or changes to the minutes as presented?
No additional changes.
There are no changes. We'd be looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Ernest was second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We now have item number 6B, which is the ratification of the operations and maintenance expenditures for the month of September 2024. These are behind tab number 7 for your review. The expenditures for the period of September 1st through 30th total to $179,775.57. Any questions? There are no questions. We'd be looking for a motion to ratify.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Just a quick note, supervisors, I am reviewing the LMP invoices that have started to come in for hurricane. So I'll have a breakdown for the board for the next meeting.
I have a question. Is there anything that allows or prohibits us from applying those costs to the hurricane expense funds that have already been approved? The $1,000 assessment fund?
It was basically hurricane related, so,
It wasn't specifically Ian, it just said
no,
hurricane.
hurricane related.
I just assumed that money
Is
could be
available.
used for this as well.
Okay, I just, clarity, I just want to make sure.
Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah,
That's fine.
as far as I understand it.
Right, because it wasn't storm
Yeah, I don't
specific,
think
it was
you
just
guys limited.
hurricane.
We're going to move into consent items. There are 2 items for your acceptance, the Bracket Sports Advisory Committee meeting minutes of September 9th and the Facility Advisory Committee meeting minutes of September 3rd.
I move we accept them as submitted.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye. Supervisor requests or comments? Are there any supervisor requests or comments?
I would just like to say a thank you to Andy, who has tried very hard to keep me on the straight and narrow and make sure that I didn't screw up too much. And certainly to Keith, who is always there on site all the time whenever I've needed him, and to Belinda. Thank you very much for everything that you've done. It's been 8 years, it's been 6 years as chair, and not every day was Christmas at these meetings, but overall, it was great. I was glad to have the opportunity and the support of the community to do this. I wish the new board coming in the absolute best as they move forward and keep this community running. So, thank you all very much.
Well, I have some comments to make in closing. First of all, I'd like to thank each one of you for doing what you do and sharing this experience with me. I remember we used to watch Law and Hardy in the old days growing up, And Laura would always say to Hardy, "It's another fine mess you got."
I have heard that one.
Okay, I told you that. I would like to tell you, but it was enjoyable, and mostly it's bittersweet. And it's a privilege, I thought it was a privilege that I was elected to be on this board. I did have probably the experience, having served as city attorney for several city attorneys and counsel to several large entities in New Jersey. And one of the first things I saw at my meeting, my first meeting, I walked in here and we started the meeting. Then I turned to you and said, "We don't stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance." I couldn't believe it. Okay, but we made that change and I was quite happy. Not to mention the welcome home sign that Keith was instrumental in giving me. I have to thank my wife, give her all types of thanks for permitting me to venture out of retirement and living happy thereafter in Florida. This was, again, a bittersweet experience. I have to go through the boards that I represented or served as liaison. Racket sports, we created the racket sports in anticipation of pickleball. And again, I would turn to my fellow members and say, board members, would you like to change committees with me? Everyone, no, absolutely not. Okay, so I dealt the hand I worked with the hand I was dealt. And despite all odds, we brought pickleball to fruition. And I want to thank all those involved. Pat Hinch, my chair lady, thanks for her. She was taking incoming like I was. Mark Favorite, Brenda Mike, who stayed the course and trusted my decision. Joe Spallina, Joe's a can-do guy. I've always appreciated what he's done. Sandy Nick, she was instrumental and she stood up and took abuse throughout this community for pickleball, but she prevailed. Karen, thank you for your trust, Karen Wilson. And I would like to thank Pat Apollonia. She was here. We would argue many times, but she had her view and I had mine, and in the end, we all agreed. And so thank each one of them. Going to my fitness committee, Nancy Sapolsky, she's the most organized person I know in my life. I mean, it's just unbelievable, and which resulted in the look we have out there at that pool. I mean, we went from the 60s to now the 20s. It's a great look as a result of her work. Rich Darby, he was the only male on the committee for a couple of years, and he was there at all times trusting our judgment. Mary Taylor, another corporate organizer, she was excellent. And of course, Cindy. Hopefully you will be sitting in this chair and you understand what we went through. I have some recommendations in closing, okay? Having served, as a counsel for large public entities in New Jersey, one thing I would suggest that we consider doing, this body, would be to annually do solicitation requests for bids for professional services. That's something that should be done, I think, and just to keep everyone on their toes. Not saying anyone's right, but we should go out for bids for professional services, as well as service contracts and all. And maybe we need to consider putting some bid bond requirements on those those requests that we go out. That's what we do in Jersey, and as a result, we get top-notch people and services and contractors not coming back trying to increase the fee or playing that game. Not that it was done here. Two, I think we need to insist that management limit access for all people, or set it up more formally than they do now. Because we have a lot of people with opinion. We have some very opinionated people here. In the old days, we would call them Peabodys, okay? And Peabody knows everything. So I think management needs to have a structured contacts with the residents. You set up, this is the form and all, because it affects your ability to deliver services to the community in the day. I would also, again, ask that we consider allowing and granting permission for local law enforcement to come into this community. So I know everyone's saying, well, my fellow supervisors are against it, but our community is changing, and our outside environment is changing. We're talking about people racing, drag racing on our streets, circumventing the security, false security, fake security parameters that we have. They're getting access. This is just the beginning, okay? This happens all over. It's not demeaning to a community. I know we had it. We lived a great high-end community. I see it out in the East Hamptons, so you don't get any higher than that. And, maybe a police car's presence is being parked at the front gate next to the Welcome Center. It serves as a deterrent. And I know this is, I've seen it done. I know, again, the community is changing and will continue to change, especially after these 5,000 units are being built down the street. So I think you need to, when you talk about strengthening the gate, back gate, you should consider other means of deterrent, law enforcement means of deterrent. I would also suggest that you consider doing some kind of deal where we take over, if we being the CDD, take over the Welcome Center. One of the senior partners in my firm would say, you always control the property within your parameters, okay? Then you could prevent something untoward from happening. When I say take it over, that doesn't mean that we have to come up with $2 million, write a check $2 million to purchase it. You look at entering a long-term relationship. They're paying taxes, a good amount of taxes for that building. We enter into a possible long-term lease, 25 or 50-year lease for it. We definitely are space-starved here. You're talking about the lockers and all these other things. We're space-starved here. When I first moved here, that was part of the community going to the Welcome Center, even though it was used to sell houses and all, but there was some of the amenities, or as I'm sure it was the POA, it was located there. So we should consider setting up a committee of experienced people with real estate background, consisting maybe of 3 to 5 people, to work out a deal with the golf course whereby we can acquire that for a long term and offset some of the space need that we have here. And I think we need to think creatively and not just let it sit there And who knows what could be located in the future, because you have no control. Next thing, it may not be compatible with the wishes and the desires of our residents. So something we should think about, and you should use experienced residents. We have a wealth of residents here, with a wealth of knowledge and experience that can assist in doing something like that. So in closing, I would like to quote one of my heroes, Martin Luther King. Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty. I'm free at last. Thank you. It's been an adventure.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to both of you, both to Rich and to Ernest. I think we've almost always been collegial, and I think it's been, there've been some really fun, really interesting moments. And I would say in closing, thank you for your time, because I don't think anybody who hasn't sat in one of these seats, whether it's for 2 years, as I'm only into it 2 years, or 8 years that you've done, it's an incredibly hard thing to do. Everything that you do, when you're planning out your weeks and your months, everything comes back to, how it is you're going to be organizing your life around your obligation to the community. So as someone who, at least 2 years into it, understands what you've both put into it, I want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you, Jim. Likewise, thank you both. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you, Rich. Good or bad. I very much appreciate the opportunity and want to thank you both. We always haven't agreed on everything, but I think we've always openly discussed everything and come to general consensus. And I appreciate the way you, Rich, have ran the meetings. They've been organized. They generally move fairly quickly. And I know everything you tried to do for this community has been in the interest of the community. You've saved a lot of money in a number of ways that people won't always appreciate, because so much of it is done behind the scenes. And I want to thank you for that. Ernest, it's been a pleasure working with you. Again, we haven't always agreed on everything. And no, I don't want the police coming in here.
Not coming, just parking a car.
Can we just buy a police car and sit it up there?
That's what they did.
You really believe people.
But thank you for being the conduit between the Rackets Committee and the board. I know it's taken some years out of your life. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for your service to this community.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I already said my thank you.
I know you
So I
did.
think you-
Thank you very much. It's
And now
been,
I get to talk to you freely.
yes,
David.
it's been a joy working with all of you, and that certainly has made the entire process easier. Again, we don't always agree, but if we did, we'd have no purpose in being here. It's the different opinions that made this entire process roll along. So, thank you all. With that,
One of you two needs to make the motion.
Yeah.
Sure.
well, maybe as my last motion, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second, my last second.
All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Meeting adjourned at 12:01 PM. Thank you, everybody.